Ann Arbor as well.
Okay, great. Next, we have Holly Moore from Holiday Entertainment, Holiday Management.
Yes, hi, I'm Holly. I am the founder and owner of Holiday Management. I started out in business management in the music industry. About 3 years ago, transitioned into artist management. I have an entirely female-run team over here at Holiday Management, and we work with a wide variety of clients, all genres, and we do basically everything they need us to do. And the talk of the town right now is, of course, getting them booked for shows and planning touring.
All right, thanks, Holly. And we have Adam Bauer from Madison House.
Hi, my name is Adam Bauer from Madison House. I am a partner there. I've been there about, going on 6 years now. So that has been amazing. I work with about 30 clients, from Toad the Wet Sprocket to Colin Hay to a bunch of more Canadian groups like the East Pointers, things like that, choir. Been booking for about 26 years now. Before this, I was president of Fleming Artists, where Laura is now, and yeah, and just plugging away, canceling, moving, and shucking and jiving, and there we go.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. And last, we have Jamie Soucil from Smoking Sled Dog Touring Artists and Smoking Sled Dog Records.
Hi, I'm Jamie Sue, and those are both my companies. I started out as a independent record label in 1999. Also a musician and performing artist with a degree in dance and studied music, and I have a certificate from University of New Orleans that says I'm a professional artist management expert. But I've been in one area of the business or other for most of my adult life. And I represent a Grammy winner, Mike Ferris, and the Moxie Strings. I'm based in Michigan, but I also have a office in Nashville, and my artists are split right down the middle of the roster, halfway between Michigan and the other half live in Nashville. So we are a boutique label, a boutique agency that represents everything from gospel, blues, jazz, Irish folk, and then we have like an adventure branch too for educational outreach.
Great, thanks, Jamie Sue. So we have a pretty eclectic mix. We have managers, agents, promoters, talent buyers in the mix here. Let's start with the agents, Laura and Adam. What do you look for in an artist? How do you, Adam, we'll start with you. You know, how do you qualify? Like, you have various artists. You're dealing with established artists, right? And you have developing artists on your roster as well that you work with.
I have a few, a smattering of some developing artists. A lot of that comes via relationships, usually with managers or somebody else that I've worked with over a period of years. But most of the clients we work with, or that I work with, are established clients. So at various levels. So there's theater level down to coffee house level. It just depends. But usually it's artists that are doing on the low side, dozen markets, couple hundred tickets. And then goes up from there, usually.
And so, Laura, are you genre specific in what you're looking for? Or is it important to sort of play to certain strengths, Laura?
That's a great question. I feel like certain agencies, for instance, Fleming's roster, we develop relationships dependent on who we're booking. So we have a lot of folk singer-songwriter. Some of them are a little edgier, might go into pop, might go into rock a little bit, but it's about what room they would play. So we have very close relationships with a lot of promoters in very specific rooms that wouldn't work for rap, hip hop, sometimes even country, so we make sure to look at not just the genre, but where somebody would be playing and what our strengths in the relationships are. And that is what I think we serve best. So it's not necessarily genre, but what type of room we would be able to book for that artist.
Jamie, so you have a pretty eclectic mix of the different types of artists that you work with. Can you leverage one type of artist with the other, or are they all playing different markets, different rooms, different audiences?
That they're all playing different rooms, different markets. Much like Lara said too, it's a wide range of artists who only play performing arts centers, down to some that just tour in smaller coffee house or listening room type capacities. For me, for my team, when we're looking for a new artist or somebody comes to us, we are looking for entertainment value. That's really important to us, that they be really excellent entertainers. We have to love what they do because we have to get behind. We have to, really believe in what they do in order for us to sell it and market it. And we get, really involved with our artists more so than we probably should sometimes. But and we'll look for a collaborative spirit, easy to work with, and a good attitude. And honestly, the last 2 years is not indicative of any of this, but we do look for somebody who's got a pretty full calendar, so that we know that they are really marketable.
I'm sorry, was there something that's happened in the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's the 800-pound gorilla that maybe we'll get to at the end. We could spend the whole time talking about it, right? But, one of the things I didn't hear, and I want to hear from Nate and Holly, but, Lara and Adam, what about qualifying the live show? Like, do you need to see it? Can you watch it on a YouTube video? Do you have to see it in person? Do you have to see them in front of their hometown? Is that an important qualifier now, how much is
it's so hard right now? And so it's been hard with the invention of the internet and whatnot. It's always great to try and see artists. There's some clients that I've represented that are still on my roster that I've represented for over 25 years, in fact, since as long as I've been in the business. It is, back then it was all, I'd see all of them before I signed them. And then now sometimes it's based on video. I haven't figured out TikTok, so that won't speak to me, but it speaks to other agents that I work with on our team. It has not, it's become, I think it's still a very important aspect of signing something, and generally it'll help get something done, especially if it's a really engaging performance.
Lara, if you're at, say, Folk Alliance or at a conference, if you see somebody that you love, will you just move on it? Could it be that instinctual?
Yeah, I mean, so even with virtual Folk Alliance last year, Scott Cook came to a one-on-one with me, and I didn't see his live show. I mean, to answer your question, right, I've been with Fleming since 2019, and the pandemic happened in early 2020. I have literally not met most of the people that I have been working with over the last 2.5 years. So I love seeing live shows. It's not possible for me to even do that right now. So going back to Folk Alliance, I checked out Scott's what was it called? His Unlocked set. And I spoke with him, but I listened to his music and absolutely fell in love with it. And I would say he's one of the more developing artists that I've taken on in the last couple of years, because we've been focusing on the artists that we have, and don't have a lot of room for developing artists right now. But it was immediate, like, love it, first listen, and it was Folk Alliance. So it's great. And I love representing him.
Holly, it's probably a little different for you as a manager, right? Because it's not just about touring. It's not just about one thing. There are many components that you're assessing when looking to work with an artist. How is it different for you?
I think it's a bit different because with management, there's so many things that go into it. There's so many different opportunities that you can line up for an artist that kind of feed off of each other. And so, yeah, I might go see an artist and they might play a really good show, but is the music going to be able to, are we going to be able to land the sync and the publishing and everything else that kind of goes into building their career? And so there's so many different outlets, but I think the most important thing for me is of course, is the music good, but like, is the artist fully invested, like mentally, emotionally, into what they're doing, into their career? And that's really important. Are they, you know, is it ride or die for their music career? And I've had some bad eggs where it's been like, oh yeah, I want to do all this stuff, and then they just sit around and don't do anything. And but the artists who truly want this, they work hard for it, and that's really, at the end of the day, the most important thing for me. But yeah, I think with live music, especially over the past 2 years, especially with a lot of virtual things, just seeing the different creative things that have come through with some of these artists has even been a great selling point for me as a manager, seeing like what they've done so far in you know, like we said, the 800-pound gorilla that's happening. That's also been a really interesting selling point for me as a manager.
Dave, it's a little different for you, you know, as a promoter, you know, the relationship you have with an artist and how you qualify.
Yeah.
And is it all about the bottom line? Do they need to be able to sell tickets, or will you just book something that you just love because it's great music?
Again, it goes back to the quantity and the volume that I have the blessing to work with. You know, it's a blessing and a curse. I book 300 shows. You put 3 to 4 artists on a bill, it's 900 to 1,200 shows. So obviously in there, I have some wiggle room just to kind of take flyers on things that I'm intrigued by, that I was impressed by. But my job is to fill these rooms, right? So it does kind of boil down to the economics of it all. But at the same time, within that, there's so many artists out there, whether they're touring or local or whatever, that I obviously get to develop my own kind of flavor of what my company books. You know, I don't do a lot of the Folk Alliance crowd, and I don't do a lot of EDM, and I don't do a lot of death metal, and I don't do a lot of hip hop, but I do some of those things when they're impressive or they come across in a certain way. Because ultimately, if I put a band in a room and it sells tickets, I've done my job, you know. And then on top of that, I obviously have the ability to kind of curate this feel. When you go to an Audio Troupe Presents event, you probably have a pretty good idea of what you're going to run into. But on some nights, it might be a live podcast, it might be a comedy act, it could be any number of things. So, you know, my job is to kind of take my personal taste and what kind of works for us, but then also just like experiment here and there and maybe develop a whole new wing of the company where, you know, maybe we do 20 comedians in a year instead of 1, or 20, you know, heavy shows or whatever it is. So
is there an artist that you booked way back when that you're like, they're going to be huge, and they are huge? Oh
yeah. I mean, I've had plenty of hits in that regard. I mixed Portugal the Man back in 2005 on a PA that I brought to the show in my Pontiac Grand Am, that I pulled these 15s on sticks out, and they were incredible, and you knew they were incredible. And the thing was, they existed underground for so long before they hit in, like, what was it, 2015. But I also screwed up just as many. I wouldn't give Andrew Buck $500 for Imagine Dragons. I stuck at $250 and I didn't get the show. And then obviously I would have lost him the next time around anyway. But, you know, I've done X Ambassadors. I've done, 21 Pilots in the small club. I did Lindsay Sterling right out of the gate, you know, and took her from the 500 to the 1100 to do 3,000 tickets at the Masonic Temple. But I've also missed on just as many, you know, it's part of the game, right?
Very cool. You know, Jamie Sue, you know, with a diverse roster of artists, some of them maybe being developing artists, some artists may be looking to expand into new territories. So is it a loss leader? You know, are your artists willing to break even or lose money to expand into a new region? Are they willing to go on tour as a developing artist and lose money? Is that a necessity these days?
Everybody's sorry.
That's okay. Jamie Sue and then Adam.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. I mean, it can be. You can lose money. None of my artists are at the level really where they are going to go out and play. I mean, I don't ever encourage anybody to play music for free, honestly. And so, you know, some of my artists would prefer to stay home rather than, you know, actually make money. But, you know, in the earlier days, and with myself too, you know, you have to decide if you're going to go out, sort of create a budget for yourself, maybe try a 2 to 4 day little tour where, you know, I mean, you might have to pack some food and camp in a campground, or just look at it as if it's a fishing expedition and it's going to be like a marketing thing, you know, like even if you're bringing in a little bit of money, it may not cover your expenses, but you know, it still can be viewed as marketing your product. You know, that's about the best answer I can give. I mean, sometimes you book a really good paying performing arts center and it's the only thing that you can get to go with it. And it's, you know, sometimes that hold you just have to let go of, because it's just not going to make sense to send your artist out on a one-off too. So I don't know. You know, for a developing artist, I think you got to get your feet wet and just see what you can do. But again, like I said, I don't ever like really recommend that people go out and just give it away.
Adam, some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now is the worst time to be a touring musician in probably the world, but we'll just keep it to North America right now. That's a full stop, period. It's a losing proposition, basically, and this is going to be perhaps the doom and gloom or the reality. I don't know. But since this is a panel about touring, people should know about the other side of things. It's terrible out there right now. Generally speaking, it is terrible. You have a lot of money that came in through grants and whatnot, which is a fantastic thing. It's helped keep venues open. It helped keep agencies open. It's helped keep a lot of people open. But with that, the ticket sales aren't materializing to the degree that one would hope. People were hoping that a lot of people would be going to shows now. You're looking at diminished capacities. As such, there's less money coming into the gate. There's less money for the venues. There's less money for the artists. And this is across all levels, all genres. Certain things might be doing better in some places, in some cases, but overall, by and large, if you're a touring musician, it is fucking hard out there. So if you're thinking about becoming a touring musician and you want to start right now, I would work on your songwriting a little longer. I would like to think that I would have thought, a year ago, 2 years ago, we would be already out of this thing, but we're not. And I think we're still at least 6 months away, maybe longer, for any kind of people to feel comfortable going to shows again. I mean, that's just the reality. So sorry to be that's just the reality, that if you're a touring musician, that's what you're going to face. So,
and that wraps up our panel, folks. Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a good day.
Well, there was a recent study, right, that 50% of people are not showing up for shows right now. So that's the reality we're in. But, Nate, let me pose this to you. I'm an artist. I'm not from the market that you're booking. I have no tour base. I don't have family or friends. I've never been there. There's no tour history. How do I get that show into a new market?
With me, it's difficult, right? I'll be honest. I mean, I'm booking local talent and I'm booking represented touring talent. And the ones that are in the middle, I have a very hard time finding a spot for that makes sense. But I also have rooms with quote unquote, and everybody has expenses, but real expenses. I've got 300, 400, 500 cap rooms. But everybody knows somebody in town that does cool house shows, cool little, listening room type places and things like that. So, I think the pipeline is still there. It's definitely, as Adam mentioned, it's tighter right now. There's less opportunity to build. I am passing in a lot more things that aren't worth like hard tickets in the market. So it's harder to book a show with me right now than it's ever been. But in general, Terry, when you come to town, if you make an impression on me and I'm not the right promoter for you, I'm going to pass you along to somebody who is. And that's the attitude that we need to go in with, is not this copy and paste, like, let's see how many people I can email at once. Make an impression on each individual. And even if they can't help you within the confines of what they do, because it doesn't financially make sense for anyone to play for 25 people in a 300 cap space, if you impress upon that person, first of all, you have a good plan in place, you have a good sound, obviously, and you just come across as somebody who genuinely wants to do this right. I'm more than likely going to say, look, maybe not for me, but I'll tell you who does book these kind of shows in town. And it's building up that network. And the hope is that if you're fantastic and you're a joy to work with in the email world, maybe we'll see you on the third run through when you've built up to where you can build 100, 150, 200, tickets. But even the smaller rooms, I see Kevin Bessert's name on the attendees here. He runs 20 Front Street in Lake Orion, and it's a small room, it's 90 cap, and right now, who knows? I don't know what he's doing for capacity right now, whether it's 50 or 60 people. But even that, if 12 people show up to that, it's a bad night. So even the small rooms have to make decisions. So, but again, if you treat everybody with respect and kind of come in with this idea of not getting a show with me, but having me help you get the right show, I think you're going to go a lot farther.
Holly, do some of your artists have agents and not have agents? Are you booking shows for some of your artists? Are you going through this personally or dealing with agents and trying to sort of expand the geo radius for your artists?
Yeah, I mean, I what's really interesting is that in my kind of client crossover within the past year or so, I've been able to bring on clients who do already have maybe an agent represent them and are able to help with that, or have brought somebody along with them, whether it's an indie label who has people who've been helping them do that, and they just really need a manager to step in and help. And so it's been an interesting kind of go. I mean, and what's really, I think, interesting about some of my more developing clients, some of the ones that are just kind of starting out, I mean, they're hungry for it. So they'll go find stuff themselves and bring it back to me and say, oh, I hear, this college university is having this thing going on. Let's book it. Let's see if we can get in there. And so it's been an interesting kind of go. And I think the unfortunate thing for me and my team is that we're young in the industry, and I started this management company a little bit before COVID hit, so it's been a learning experience. But we've been very grateful for the other people that have stepped in from artists that we've brought on, and they've been able to say, hey, we had this opportunity come through, we just need help with everything else that goes along with it. And just a little bit of everything, just trying to managing all different arenas and all different ways to get the artists out there and kind of help continue build their market and their fan base and getting that stuff out there.
Laura, let's say I'm an act from the East Coast and I know that Colorado is going to be a great market for me, that just the audience there is going to respond to our music. Do you get them out there? Do you work your way out there? Do you kind of have to continue to build the radius till it makes sense? Do you get an anchor show out there? Like, what do you say to the manager that sort of wants to develop in a new region that, they have no base?
That's a great question. And it's all good. Holly can also answer this. But, like Nate is talking about, it really is, it's an agent's job and a promoter's job to make sure that they're in the right room, because nobody wants to play to 15 people in a 300 cap room. Even if you're playing to 15 people in a 25 cap room, that's better. That's better for everybody. And so when you're looking at, I don't know, just a hunch that you're going to do great in a place, that's really not, I don't find that responsible as an agent to just take their word for it or believe in that, gumption. That's great. There are a few things that that really just go for like talent and have built-in crowds, but there aren't many of them. So if there's like a local concert series or Levitt Shell or something like that, where they actually are able to say, we're going to bring the people, you don't have to have any draw whatsoever, we think your music fits with this style. They do exist, but they're extremely few and far between, especially right now, since most of them have been rebooking since 2020. So what I would say, especially just looking at this moment in time, more than in general, is stick with the markets that you know well, because I mean, I noticed this question in the comments as well, like risk mitigation and how can you tell how many people are coming out to even a hometown show? The answer is that you cannot, especially right now. I mean, it could literally, one of my artists played a hometown show the other day, and she normally fills a room and she had 10 people come out. And that was it. I mean, she fills a room. This is not somebody who plays to empty rooms, and no one came. People bought tickets. I had another artist play a room, and this is perfect because it was in Colorado and he hadn't played Colorado before, and he played to the sound guy. But he had a ton of people come on live stream, including the owner, and he made plenty of money on the live stream, but literally played to no one. So right now, I mean, it really is, as Adam said, it's so hit and miss, and we have no idea. We still haven't found a perfect pattern with what shows are selling and what aren't, even with a tour history. So if you don't have a tour history in a space, I mean, you can basically assume that nobody's coming out to see you right now. And that has nothing to do with your talent. It has nothing to do with how badly you want it. It has nothing to do with how badly how well you're promoting it. It just has to do with fans only wanting to take the risk of getting sick by going to see people that they know. That's the best thing that I can think of.
Adam, what resources do you use from a touring perspective? And some of them may be free, some of them may be subscription based. What are your most accessible resources for booking tours?
It'd be, first off, just our database and our history within our system of who we've worked with. Then it would be probably Polestar and Celebrity Access. I use a little bit of Spotify. Some people might use it more. I don't really use social media to gauge anything. Generally, how I book tours is pretty much through relationships. I have people I've worked with for a long time, and I generally go to those. I generally go to those people, not, for a lot of the clients that I work with, they're the right promoters for those artists. So a lot of times it's the number one thing you have is relationships, and that's what I rely on first and foremost.
Nate, you put a couple of analytic platforms, from a promoter perspective. Are you looking at the geo profile or the engagement, or what are you using metric and sound charts for as a promoter?
I'm looking more than I ever have in the past. That's for damn sure. I used to trust my gut and just kind of roll with what felt right and where it was coming from and who the team was and all that kind of thing. But I'm definitely looking at acts that, maybe on first glance hit all the metrics, right? And this would make sense. But then, like Laura said, people aren't showing up to certain shows. So I want to look at the curves. And if there's a curve that is going the right direction now, currently, that's what I'm looking to book more so than the ones that are just kind of holding steady. And I'll still book those too. I mean, you never know. There's folks that are analytically driven. There's that respond to seeing something on Spotify and go see the show. But right now we're also like leaning into our musical comfort food, of like going to see the band that makes you the happiest, going to see your favorite band, going to see, bands that have been important to you over the years. So as much as like, I'd love to use chart metric and sound charts and things like that to like establish a pattern, it's just a little piece of what I'm doing to make sure that I'm just taking that extra step to protect my ass,
Jamie Sue, any resources that you think that are important?
Well, again, in non-COVID times, we had the booking conferences, which was always helpful in preparing for the coming 12 to 18 months. And those have not really been, there's been a spattering of a couple of them that have happened, and some that have been virtual, but.
Can you mention what those are? So Polestar, Billboard, Aspen Live?
More Performing Arts Center, Arts Midwest, APAT in New York. That happens every January. Arts Midwest used to happen in the fall. A lot of the fall booking conferences were regional, covered different regions of the United States. Western Arts Alliance, Arts Midwest, and then a lot of different smaller state state conferences, and then coming up to the big Performing Arts Center conference, which was APAP in New York every year. Then, you know, like Adam said too, you know, we have databases, you know, long standing relationships with a lot of presenters that where you connect, you know, A to B to C to D. And then, you know, I use GigWell. They have Tour IQ in there if I'm really looking for something that I can't find in my database as far as trying to find something within a blackout radius. But, you know, I have a, you know, Polestar sometimes, but, you know, basically relying on what we already have in place.
Adam, in the non-pandemic times, how do co-bills come together, and how do developing artists get on bills with more established artists?
That's an interesting question. It's a very loaded question, depending on how you look at it. I think first and foremost, artists get on bills by developing relationships with other artists. They make friends with them. That is always the first and foremost. Another way is agents like me talk to other agents, package things up. You know, same thing with managers. But the best way to get on a tour is to build a relationship directly with an artist. If you're a developing artist and you want to go out with somebody bigger, a lot of times it won't work, but sometimes it will. A lot of times you need a really compelling story, and the gatekeepers are there to suss out the things that have a really compelling story. But fortunately, I mean, in normal times, support things. I think as an industry, there's a lot of emphasis put on support, and I can't remember a support artist I've seen in the last decade that I paid to go see a support artist. I think as an artist, the first thing you need to be doing is building your own hard ticket value, whether that's 1 ticket, 10 tickets, 20 tickets, 30 tickets. You need to focus on yourself and not what somebody else is doing. And that's how you build a career, because you want people spending their money to see you. Otherwise, you're forgettable, unfortunately.
Thanks, Adam. Holly, you know, Adam made the point of developing relationships with other artists. How would you advise an artist how to make that happen?
A lot of it, you know, whether it's through me and my team that we facilitate between artists and try to connect artists that, you know, we see have a similar fan base in you know, the type, you know, chart metric is actually great. I'm glad Nate brought that up, but we use a lot of that to see who the fans are that, you know, are listening to our artists, that are also listening to other artists. And we try to foster that as much as we can with our own team. But also just, you know, fostering the idea of going out to other artist shows too. That's kind of something that I've experienced here and there with a few you know, clients in the past, where it's like they want to go out and perform with certain types of artists, but they don't actually go to those shows themselves and like show up and support those other artists as well. And I think that's a big factor in, you know, a lot of what these artists, you know, want to do. And so yeah, it is about relationships, and it's about you know, that part that Adam also said about, you know, you do have to be able to focus on yourself and what your goals are too. And but I think just having an open collaborative mindset with other artists is really important, and just fostering that as much as we can, and doing as much as we can to have artists relate to one another is really important.
I want Jamie Sue and Nate to answer this question. You know, when putting a package together, you know, does 1 + 1 always equal 2? So does it have to be 2 artists that have different audiences that might be complementary, or does it just become a higher ticket price because these artists have the same audience and you put them together? Jamie Sue, do you have a thought or opinion about that?
I mean, usually if I'm putting somebody in front of somebody else, it's somebody who is, we just want to get in front of more people. So I would say that it's not really a co-bill. It's more support. Again, I don't know. Right now, there's not a lot of that going on anyway. It's hard to, I don't know. It's been hard to lift my head and look up and not be just continuing to think about canceling and rescheduling and canceling and rescheduling and tearing up contracts and reissuing contracts. But I guess I would just say that, right now, it's not even something I'm thinking about putting together a co-bill. Again, it would just have to be, usually I come at that from putting somebody in front of somebody else who I'm just looking to expand their audience.
Okay.
So
Nate,
I'm hoping that Nate might have a better answer.
yeah, maybe
than
from
I
a
will.
promoter perspective, are you trying to put together co-bills?
Not a ton. I will answer this in the same way I could answer every single one of these questions. And the answer is, it depends. The younger kids have the stamina for a 4-band bill where the support can really go off on a level that might reach what the headliner is pulling. Most adults want to go to a show and it's a 2-band bill with 1 opener that's really strong. I do wish that I was pitched more of the adult tours that had an opener that was strong, but also had some sort of pull, but as opposed to just, handing $250 or $500 to like the friend of the band but they have the ability to do that if they sell the tickets. I'm not looking as an adult to have for a 4.5 hour night of music. I'm looking for an hour and a half for my favorite band. And, while I'm getting a drink, I want to be impressed by what's going on stage as I'm making my way to my spot. And that's kind of the key. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of local artists. Going back to your last question, the idea of like how to make that relationship. It's about being genuine and really feeling like you have something to bring to the table. You do have to build your own kind of base. And if you can bring that base to the table, then great. But if you're just cringy in a cringy manner, just going up and trying to befriend artists so that they'll take you on tour, I've seen that happen way too often, that a band has ruined their career before they even started because they're trying too hard too early on when they really have nothing to offer and all they have is stuff to gain. So you really need to build yourself up to the point where you are a valuable support act, in that if this artist is going around and they're not selling all the tickets, that you're selling the rest of them for them. You're filling the room up the rest of the way. The headliner should be carrying the mail for sure. But if you are at it as a support act to a show that's going to benefit you, you should be benefiting the show as well.
Laura, is it the agent's job to promote the show?
No. I'm absolutely terrible at promotion. Like I mentioned, I'm a musician first and foremost, and I have a degree in vocal jazz, and I am classically trained, and I do musical theater, and I was in an Americana band. And you know what I hate is promotion. I cannot do promotion. I am terrible at it. If it was my job, I would not be an agent. So no, it is my job to find the right room for you. It's my job to have the right relationship. It's my job to do your contract, to negotiate your contract, and that is it. I even hate announce dates. So it is kind of like the opposite of my job to promote the show.
Adam, some of these larger agencies are full service companies now, right? They secure tour sponsorship, they have marketing teams. Is it the agent's job to promote a tour?
Well, I mean, not being in one of those larger agencies, I can only tell you, the marketing departments, the advertising departments, any of the bells and whistles that are generally at the bigger agencies are going to be exactly that, bells and whistles that are focused on the things that generate revenue for the agency. As a developing artist, you will not, unless you have a major record deal or something else like that, you will not be one of those people who will be one of those artists taking advantage of all the little tools that the agents will probably try to sell you on when they're trying to sign you, unless something happens and you write the songs that make a difference with your with kind of your career. with and kind of going back on what Nate said a second ago in terms of like support artists. When somebody reaches out to me asking to add support, whether it's a promoter or an artist reaching out to me, or I'm reaching out to somebody else, it always is amusing to me that there's a $250 or $500 budget on a show that's charging a $35, $45, $55, $65 ticket, and the artists that you're pitching are a $10 ticket at best. And the idea that those artists that are supporting that other larger show are going to actually contribute tickets and bring fans at a significantly higher ticket price. I mean, it can happen if all the stars align, but I think just if you're out there trying to reach out to agents and this, that, and the other thing, and thinking that playing down the street every other week is helping build your career, it likely is hurting you if you're not starving people a little bit and trying to build your ticket price up. If you want to have a real value to a tour, that's one of the ways you do it. Sorry, I got sidetracked on.
No, I like that question, and maybe we'll redirect it. Can as a local artist, can you overexpose yourself in the market? Can you overplay?
Absolutely.
Jamie Sue, how often do you advise your artists to play in their top markets?
Probably twice a year, sometimes 3. It depends on the opportunity. I mean, even though they may be able to draw, it just isn't a good idea to be jumping on stage in your main market, especially more than twice a year. I mean, I have a lot of Christmas shows on my roster, so we usually have some kind of holiday thing, and then maybe something late, late spring, and then the very rare occasion, maybe fall. But you have to remember also in the larger markets like Nashville, you are competing with touring artists too. It's not a town where I would put, really like my coffee house artists, because it's, not necessarily a paying town unless you're in the upper echelon, we just did a show at the Country Music Hall of Fame in December, got a really, really good turnout. That's something that we want to protect for the future. So really trying to minimize further appearances, throughout the rest of the year, because we want to be able to make that an annual thing. So you just have to remember that every time you jump on stage, it's not necessarily, more me on stage is not necessarily a good thing.
How is it different for developing artists? Can you play? And I know Nate probably wants to weigh in too. Like, could you play every 8 weeks in your local market if you're a developing artist?
I think it depends. It's kind of one of those things where if you are a developing artist, I think you can get away with it a little more frequently, but you still want to be cautious about oversaturating. You want to be cautious about just really, it is going to get to a point where it's just the same people coming out. And so I think you can with a developing artist, especially one that is fairly new to being on stage in general, but you just have to be very, very cognizant of, is this too much for this artist? And can we just expand it out more versus having them play the same, 2 venues every 8 weeks or whatever it is. So yeah, I think it's a little different, but there's still a lot to, keep in mind as you're working with the developing artists.
Nate, do radius clauses apply to, can you explain what that is? And do they apply to the artists, to your local artists in your market?
So I think Laura and I could have a 1-hour conversation just on this topic alone. We had a conversation over email about Mayor Lewine, and I know the Accidentals use the same similar strategy here in Michigan. They'll roll out a tour and there'll be 10 Michigan dates on it. And it makes me cringe. It freaks me the hell out, but it works for them. So what I want to say is Laura is right in this case. Now, normally every bone in my body aches to be like, no way this works, that you could play Holland and Grand Rapids and Traverse City and Kalamazoo and Ann Arbor and Canton and Detroit on the same tour, but it freaking works for certain artists that appeal to a certain demographic who has folks that go to your PAC or to your local soft ticket event or whatever it is, and you mix it together in a way that works. So Laura, I'm saying to you in front of the world that you were right on this particular event, and maybe we would have sold 10 or 15 more tickets to our Grand Rapids show if you weren't playing in Muskegon or Holland or whatever it was. But
this is being recorded, by the way, Nate. So
yeah, that's fine. I'm cool with this. Okay. It was a great show. It was a wonderful show. It was in the middle of the pandemic, and we still had a nice audience and all that kind of thing. And I would have loved to sell out the show for you, but we didn't get there. But we'll do it next time. But we've had this conversation. So a radius clause absolutely makes sense for certain artists, certain demographics, certain types of folks. That is,
by the way.
The radius clause is basically, in my offer, I will say this artist cannot play within 50, 75, 100 miles of the show that I'm offering on within a 60, 90-day period. And it protects me. And I've always explained it to you this way. Like Kanye West plays Ford Field or whatever. And if Kanye West played Ford Field every day for 3 months, eventually Kanye West would not sell out Ford Field. So you have to protect your investment. And I need to know from you what it is that you're doing. Now, Laura, to her credit, absolutely said, we're playing here, 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 and here. This is what's going to work for you. And I went, are you sure? And I think we even might have adjusted the dollar amount back just the tiniest bit, and you were cool with it. And we went with it. And the show got into points. Everybody was happy. So I put that radius clause in to protect me, and the good agents, the truly good ones, will say, look, your radius clause makes sense. I know why it's here, but I'm doing this and you want to get on board. Cool. Sometimes, you'll just find a show pops up in the next town over and your show's struggling, not selling the tickets, and you're pissed, and that's the bad scenario. That's the agents I call up, and that's where things get, a little escalated. But in general, the idea of it makes sense. But as long as you know your act, who's coming to your shows, and you can explain, I'll roll with whatever whatever makes sense. And if the show doesn't play out the way that it should, and I lose a bunch of money because I know everybody went to the show 20 miles down the street, we're going to have words afterwards about what that means, But in that case, Laura and I, we talked it out. We were respectful to one another. And that's why we can sit on this Zoom and look each other in the eyes and smile, as opposed to like, that Laura, that son of a gun.
Laura, are you thinking about budgeting at all when you're routing a tour? Are you looking at how far you're traveling? What the guarantees are? Are you working with management? Where does budgeting come into play for you?
Yeah, of course. And I want to say too, not to get into a love fest with Nate, but promoters that have been working and venue promoters, not just promoters that work with multiple venues, have been working in their markets for a long time. They know what shows normally work and what shows normally don't. So if you are an artist that's self-booked, or you're just starting with an agency, if somebody has a radius clause, they have it for a reason. It's not just to be prohibitive for artists. It's because they have found that is what they need to make sure that a show sells well. And so I find that radius clauses are normally a good indicator of what you should be doing, not just something that you want to try to skirt out of or not tell anybody about or something like that. I mean, they're in place because the experts in that market know their market, right? So I really respect radius clauses. And as Nate mentioned, if I know for whatever reason that they are in this one case not accurate or wouldn't apply, then we have that conversation. But in general, radius clauses are there for a reason. So anyway, budgeting, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, again, being a musician first and foremost, the thing that I wouldn't feel like I was failing in my job, it would be if my artists did not make some type of money on the road. Certainly can't say that during the pandemic. However, with pandemic out of mind, making sure that we're budgeting and finding the high guarantee places or a series or whatever, that's part of our job as an agent, is to know where those things are. And then to also come up with a deliberate and coordinated plan, especially for the developing artists, to leverage their bases where they can make that guarantee, and find routing dates for them that are developing cities for them, where if they do come in under, their expenses, that the guarantees are bolstering them so that they're not out there losing a ton of money, because that's not sustainable. And so I feel like we're not doing our job as agents if we're not building a sustainable tour. And for existing artists, it's a lot easier. I work with a few of them. I will say, in my experience, it's easier because we really do know their markets a lot better. They've been on the road. We know where to hit. But with developing artists, it's really, really important to make sure that you've got at least a couple anchor dates in places that can support you if the shows don't go as planned in the other places. You're on mute.
Okay. Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Talk a little bit about promoting shows. Jamie Sue, what are the essentials? Email, socials, bands in town? Are we still making posters? What are the things of the essentials? And then what do you do if it's gravy?
Sometimes it's all of those things, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. There's, what is it? Rule of 7, where somebody needs to see something 7 times before it becomes like, oh yeah, I've heard that name before, or I heard about this show. So it's posts, it's posting, it's emails, it's media features, sometimes radio, hitting all those things in a timely manner. Not saying, oh, somebody needs to post something on Facebook or Instagram 7 times and you do it 7 times 3 days before the show. That's not the correct way to do it. It needs to be timed out. It needs to be thought of as a marketing pattern, where you look at it from anywhere from 16 weeks to 8 weeks to the 3 weeks to day of show. So it's just something that has to be executed in the proper manner. And I still am a believer in like hit up all this stuff. Just because not everybody's on Facebook, and there's still people who use email. And sometimes there's people who let you hang posters in their window. So
there's people that still use AOL too.
Yes.
Holly, do you have any pointers as far as promotion goes for touring?
No, Jamie Sue kind of hit all of the points, which is, everyone's on different platforms, everyone uses different stuff. And so I still think, there's a big push of email, social media. I'm a huge fan of infiltrating like Facebook groups and being like, hey, something's happening at this day and this time. And my team, we do a lot of that. But yeah, I think you just kind of have to, especially working with developing artists, is really just taking all of those opportunities to get stuff out there. But I was going to actually comment on the same thing Jamie Sue said. You can't just do it like 3 days before a show, really taking the time well in advance to let people know, because I would hope people would want to know much further than 3 days in advance. But just really having a strategy in place and how you're going to get that information out to your market and your fan base is really important. But yeah, just really tackling as many of those as you can, and understanding your artist demographic enough to know what kind of platform to target them on is really important too.
Nate, are you paying attention? Like, are you signed up on every email list for the artists that you're booking? Are you searching them out on social media to make sure that they're actively promoting?
No. I have a Twitter list that I call bands playing our shows, or artists playing our shows, or something like that. So we have a Twitter column on my tweet deck that I follow, and I could tell certain acts are just nonstop and others are you barely hear from. And obviously when we place a lot of the ads and things like that, you have teams that can get you ad access in a half an hour, and some you have to ask 37 times. Or don't know how to do it at all. Those you mentioned the agency marketing departments earlier, as you build those out, or as a management company builds out their marketing platform, ideally for me, they would be creating content with which I can market. Like I want the content and I want it to be strong, and I want it to be strong not only for the fans of the band, but to convert new fans over to the band. And there's two different processes there. I can talk to a Foo Fighters fan about the Foo Fighters and it's an easy conversion. That doesn't mean it's an easy conversion to get them to buy the ticket, but it's a different conversation than to say like, this is the Foo Fighters and this is why you would like them. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't remember the crux of the question.
But you're keeping track, but it's not essential. Is it your job, I guess, essentially to help sell the tickets?
Yeah, I mean, I am the promoter, right? So obviously we need to activate locally, but what I can't do is develop that band's career. So it's my job as a talent buyer to gamble, right, on like what team is going to bring me the most ability to sell tickets. And then within that, I need to make sure that we don't screw it up and become the lowest count on the tour, which I love that email. Oh, you're the lowest count on the tour. It's like, yeah, well, you're the lowest count on my sheet, so piss off, But sometimes Michigan stands up and is punches way above its weight. And then sometimes Michigan is a bit of a lull between Chicago and Toronto. And there's not much we can do to fight that. But as long as we're doing our jobs, hopefully the buy in the end is the thing that is the right decision. And then everything else kind of goes the way it should. I'm not a miracle worker. I can't get 500 people to a show for a band with no fans. It's just, I don't have those opportunities.
I don't believe that, Nate, for a minute. I'm pretty sure you could.
Maybe once a year. I got that. I could shoot that shot once a year, right?
Yeah.
Where I can get behind
charming. Pretty charming. I don't know if you're that charming, but pretty charming. All right. So last question. What's one piece of advice that you have? And let's do like a real quick rapid fire go around, like 10 seconds each. Something you've learned or something that you would advise, aspiring musicians to consider when it comes to touring. Laura, do you want to start?
Sure. As interesting as this sounds, I would say just remember that your music and yourself, you're the product. This is a business. If you are looking at it as more than a hobby, you really need to be looking at it like a business. And I feel like that's a major pitfall of a lot of musicians. They have all the passion, but they're not looking at it like a product and like a business.
Very cool. Adam.
Breathe deep and work on your craft and time your touring appropriately.
All right. Jamie Sue.
I would say work on the presentation of your live show over and over and over again, which is a great thing to be doing right now during the pandemic. And if you were performing before the pandemic, just really put the relativity of what you do under a microscope, because there's always time to pivot and to become better at what you do and become a better entertainer.
Holly?
Really take the time and the confidence to know who's in your circle and the people around you, and if you can really trust them and that they're there to support you.
All right, Nate.
Shout out for using the word pivot. We haven't used that one in 2022 yet, but my answer to that question is a metaphor. I'm full of shitty metaphors, and I want you to think of your band or your artist as a table. And that table has a bunch of legs that hold it up. And if one of those legs is too short or wobbly, the table is going to fall over. So each of those legs is a branch of your business, whether it's your accounting and your business side, your marketing, your music, your live performance, your promotion, all those kind of things. You're a table with a bunch of legs. Don't let one short leg knock the table over.
You're only as good as your shortest leg? Is that what you're trying to say?
Only as good as your shortest leg or your wobbliest leg. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Nate, Laura, Adam, Jamie Sue, Holly, thank you so much for taking time today.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks for being such a great host.
Thank you,
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Rock
Thanks,
on,
y'all.
everyone. All right. Bye, everyone. Take care.
I didn't know how to turn your phone off. Oops.